Because I think if you're like interested in publishing your work or anything, it's very easy to get kind of into the mindset of like thinking about what other people will think of it, whether that's an agent that will read your query or like the agent that you've already signed with or your editor or future readers or beta readers. And there's so many other people that you can think about reading your book, but really what's important is just you writing your book. And so I think just remembering to like have fun with it and just like write for yourself, because if you don't write for yourself, then I don't know, I'm a kind of a firm believer in like you write the story for you and other people will like it, because like if you've written it for yourself and you like it, like there will be people that like it out there.
Hello, and welcome to So I Wrote a Book, Now What? Where writers chat about writing. My guest today is Isabelle Engel. She is the author of Most Eligible. It is an upcoming romance debut that is Bachelor inspired. It comes out in early 2026 from St. Martin's Press, and I'm so excited for it. We talk about everything that went into writing that book, as well as writing her second book and her whole journey to become the author that she is. So let's get into it. Hi, Isabelle. Thank you so much for joining me.
Hi, great to be here.
So what made you decide to write a book?
It's a great question, and one that I was thinking about earlier. I mean, I think I've kind of always been a writer a little bit. When I was little, I would like try to narrate little stories to my mom and she would write them down for me. And then as I got older, I think I built up a little bit more like stamina in terms of writing. So I was able to have like longer stories. And then I finished the first book length thing that I ever wrote when I was a senior in high school. It wasn't very good. It was pretty messy, but it was definitely fun to have written a full book length thing. And then I've always kept writing since then, but then in around 2022, I got a little bit more serious about writing novels or books, and romance specifically. And I think I don't know, I was finished college and I was a little bit out of that. And all of a sudden my brain had all this time to think about stuff that wasn't school. And it was a good creative outlet. And I just kept like having ideas and I just kept going. Whenever I have an idea, I never really think that it could be like a story. And so I think that it's just made sense for me to keep going and to see if my ideas will turn into books.
What drew you to the romance genre?
So I read pretty widely in other genres. And then I think in the past, like I had explored with writing in other genres as well. And I still do sometimes a little bit just for fun. But I think there's something, I've always kind of looked for the love story in everything, whether it's like a rom-com movie or, Gladiator, the movie, which basically has very like little romance, the first one anyway. And I just love, the love story. I'm always looking for that. I was always like aware of romance as a genre, of course. But then several years ago, I really discovered like the depth of the romance genre and just how much there is and what a wonderful community it is. And as soon as I started reading a little bit more widely in romance, I started to realize that like my ideas are romance. And so that I kind of went from there. It was just such a kind of joyful writing process. I think that something that's different about my writing now versus my writing when I was like younger or in high school is that it's pretty happy, I would say. Whereas like when I was younger, it was always kind of dark and twisty. And I don't know if it's maybe just like the phase of my life that I'm in, but right now I feel like I'm really leaning into like writing joyful things or things that will make me happy, even if there's like a little bit of a dark underbelly in there as well.
When you sit down to write, do you have like a routine or a schedule or a spot that you typically do, or is it different every time?
So I'm in kind of a weird phase right now where I'm still getting used to writing while also having like a 9 to 5 day job. So when I wrote my previous 2 manuscripts, I was in grad school at the time. And so grad school obviously took up a lot of my brain space and a lot of my time, but it was also a bit more of a flexible schedule. So I would have time like during the day to write, maybe after I was working as well, but like after that. And now it's a little bit harder for me to find time to write because sometimes I just get home and I'm just so exhausted that I don't have, the bandwidth to write anymore. So I've been trying to really get down and focus on the weekend as much as possible. I don't know if this is just like me bribing myself or me actually having a routine, but I do love to write in coffee shops. It's like gets me out of the house a little bit. And it's always fun to just like look around and see people and get a little bit of inspiration, even if they don't know that you're watching them. So I think I would basically say that like I don't necessarily have a schedule or a routine, but I would love to have one, but that might, I don't know, that just might not be where I'm at right now. So I just kind of take the time wherever I can get it.
Yeah, that makes sense. So with your previous two manuscripts while you were in grad school, did you query the first one?
So there was a time like between my undergrad and grad school when I was living in the same town as where I went to undergrad, working at a Texas Roadhouse and also working on campus a little bit still. And so I wasn't in grad school at that time, and I would just kind of like write during the day before I would go to work at Texas Roadhouse. Um, and
And is that, I have a
yeah,
question.
yeah,
Is
absolutely.
that a like the name of the restaurant or is it like just Texas Roadhouse?
Yes. Oh my gosh. Sorry. Yes. So Texas Roadhouse is a chain, is a restaurant
Oh,
chain.
okay. I'm
Um,
from the Pacific Northwest and we do not have Texas
no
Roadhouse.
worries. Well, I think you're missing out. You have to go to one.
It sounds like it.
Yeah, it's basically like a steak restaurant.
Oh,
There's a lot
cool.
of them, I guess, on the East Coast. I didn't know that it wasn't, I thought they were everywhere basically.
Maybe
But
there is. Now I'm gonna have to look it up.
yeah, I mean, you know, not my ideal type of food, but it was actually a really fun place to work. And I think it gave me some good inspiration for writing. But it was definitely like a fun job to have while I would kind of write in the afternoon and then go there to work in the evening. Um, and taught me a lot about steak. So that's something that I can definitely incorporate into a future. Right.
So you would like
Right.
go like work a little bit and then go to your job.
Yeah, so I wrote that one, and that was like I mean, it was a book. It existed. It had a beginning, a middle, and sort of an end, and it was like the right length and everything. I queried it a tiny bit, like to 4 or 5 agents, but I think I kind of knew that it wasn't, you know, I don't want to say that it wasn't good because I think that like good is kind of a subjective term, and I was really proud of it. So, and it was good that I finished it and all of that, but it was not publishable, we'll say. And so I gave up on that one kind of quickly. After that, I ended up moving to Washington, D.C. to do grad school. And I got to DC and I hadn't really written in a little while. And I just kind of sat down and started writing this book about this young woman who's like left her hometown to go to a big city and then is coming back and she really missed it. And like at the time, I didn't really think that it was reflective of my own life at all. But I think looking back, it definitely was because I was, homesick and like missing where I was coming from. And so that book was really kind of, I don't know if personal is quite the right word because it wasn't like the exact same situation, but I was like sort of working through something, and that definitely came out in the book. I did query that one pretty widely, and so that was in I think 2023. I queried that to 70 or 80 agents. Maybe it's wild to think that there's so many agents out there. I I would say like moderately successful in the query trenches. I didn't get an agent with that book, but it did get some attention and like some full requests and things like that. And the overarching feedback was like, we liked the first scene and the voice, but like there's not really a plot. And which I like was totally true. I know, like
Who needs them?
Who needs them? I don't know, not me. And so I took that in stride. I was like, okay, like they liked the writing. They liked this fun, like kind of weird first scene that I had. And I just like need a plot, I guess. And so that book kind of like tapered off. I actually just got a rejection on a query from it a couple weeks ago,
Oh my
um,
gosh.
which,
Wait, and when did you query
yeah,
it?
2023. And this is like after I had queried another book, gotten an agent, I have a
Amazing.
publishing deal. And I was like, thanks for getting back to me, but too late.
Do you wonder if you were just in the maybe pile that whole time?
I don't know.
Or
It's
if
a good
that's how long it
question.
takes them. I get
Yeah,
some rejections on things I've previously queried years before, and I'm always like,
I know. It's such
should
a
I be flattered that they replied? I don't know. Anyways,
I
keep
I
going.
don't think there's a good answer. I mean, I think maybe just some agents just have so many things in their queue that it just takes
Yeah,
a long time. But I was surprised because I had just assumed months earlier that it was a rejection and that it was just kind of a
right.
no response rejection. So the confirmation was helpful, I guess, but I wasn't still thinking about it. Um, yeah, so then that book kind of tapered off slowly, and I still like I'm gonna go back to it someday. I'm gonna rewrite it and like hope I would love to like see it through again, but not right now. And then while I was querying that, I started working on another project, like a rom com set on The Bachelor, sort of, which
Fun.
will be my debut rom com. Um,
Yay.
and that one was just like I don't know, I was just having a lot of fun with it, and I think it wasn't really intentional, but the previous book had been very like vibey. They go swimming in a lake a lot. There's not a lot of plot. And all the scenes could kind of be moved around, and there was no, like, that wouldn't affect the story, which was a bit of a red flag that I didn't realize. And then with the Bachelor inspired book, it was just like right away, there was so much kind of plot, and like I was having all these like fun plot ideas, and each scene was more or less kind of like leading into the next one, which I mean ended up being successful. And then I um, submitted it to the Smooch Pit Mentorship program, which I had never heard of, but then I became aware of, and I thought this sounds like a very cool opportunity. So, if listeners don't know, Smooch Pit is a mentorship program for romance writers.
Yeah, we
Um, yeah.
had Christine Cohen on. She's one of the
Oh,
founders.
amazing.
Yeah,
Yes,
yeah.
that's amazing. She's wonderful. It's a really, really great program, and the showcase is going on right now while we're recording, so I don't know when this will come out yet. So I submitted to that, and I ended up being selected as a mentee by Julie Cassidy, who was just amazing, and I loved working with her so much. The program was really helpful in terms of revising the manuscript, like making it query ready. And then at the end of the program, it culminates in an agent showcase, which is sort of just like querying on steroids, I guess you could say. Because
That sounds terrible.
I mean, in a potentially positive way, I guess. So agents are able to look at the website and see the pitches from the mentees. So it's, you're sort of querying them, but it's more like they're coming to this place to look at them. And so that was how I connected with my agent. I also sent some queries separately from the showcase. Yeah, and then I signed with her, and it's been a really great experience working with her.
That's so great. So then did you know it was ready, obviously, through the mentorship?
Yeah, it was. I mean, I think it was like query ready, certainly, hopefully, um, and but there were edits that that I made with my agent that were kind of significant. I mean, they weren't things that were really changing like the heart of the book or anything
Hmm.
too big, but there were a few changes. Like I changed up the ending a little bit, which is something that I heard that from some friends that like that a lot of people do end up changing the ending like with their agent or with their editor. But I felt like my agent really kind of understood like what I was doing, and she got like the heart of the book, and she got like all the fun hijinks and shenanigans and stuff. So none of that really changed. It was just ironing out some stuff, like adding in a little bit of more of a subplot, and kind of changing the ending so that it made a little bit more sense.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And then when you went on sub, were you able to find an editor that also shared the same vision, or were there a lot of extensive edits after that?
I mean, I feel really lucky in terms of like where I ended up with my editor. She's really lovely, and I also felt like she shared my vision for the book. Like she really understood the plot, and she did make the, suggestions, and I did do a lot of edits, but they were all suggestions that I agreed with. And I was kind of like, how do you know my book better than I do? Like, there were things that, I had thought like, oh, maybe this could change, or maybe this could change, but I didn't really know how. I found her suggestions really helpful in kind of figuring out how to go about fixing little issues, again, related to the ending, because the ending is always really hard.
Endings are so hard. Endings and
Yeah.
beginnings and middles.
Just the whole thing is hard.
The whole thing is hard.
Yeah.
I think that's so interesting what you said about her knowing the book more than you. I just
Mm-hmm.
recently sent one of my books to quite a few beta readers, and I started getting feedback, and some of them would flag things and be like, oh, like Allie is my main character in this one, and they'd be like, Allie wouldn't say that.
That's so
Allie wouldn't say it like
interesting.
that. And I was like, oh yeah, you're right. Like, how do you know her so well? But I think that's so funny how, like, once the book is a book, people have their own interpretation and experience with it.
Yeah. Something similar happened with this book. Actually, one of my beta readers, Rhett, is the love interest, and he's like a country singer. I don't know if I would say he's like grumpy, but he's on the path to grumpy, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and one of my
I
beta
like that.
readers just commented, Rhett wouldn't roll his eyes. Like, I was like, oh, you're totally right. He would never.
Absolutely not. I
So
don't know what I
check
was
that out.
thinking.
Yeah.
Isn't that funny? Beta readers are the best in that way that
Yeah. I
like
think,
they could see that.
yeah, maybe sometimes part of it too is that we've known all of the different iterations of the book and the characters. And they're only reading the current one. So we, like, maybe in a previous iteration, like, Rhett was a little bit more jokey, but then in the actual book he wasn't, so he would not roll his eyes. So
When does the book come out?
early 2026, I believe. There's no
Yay.
set date yet, but should be around then.
That's so
Yeah.
exciting. How do you, how do I ask this in a way that makes sense? Like, how does that get decided? Because you signed and then you did edits. Are you still doing edits, or is it just part of a publication schedule?
I don't know if I have a great answer to this question. I think
That's okay.
that when it comes out is basically just like when the publishers kind of decide, or when they have like books slated a year and a half in advance, and so it's like when the next like available openings are. I think, I could be wrong about that. We decided to accept the offer in the summer, last
Mhm.
summer, and then I signed the contract a few months later. But so I think from the beginning it was kind of like they were looking at winter, like early 2026 as the time frame, and
Mhm.
that kind of has like time for edits and stuff like that built into it. So I'm done with the bigger edits on the book, which was
Mhm.
a real. I was really like working working hard on that. Um, so I did 2 or 3 rounds of edits. I think two like sort of bigger rounds of edits, and then some smaller things. And then also had a sensitivity reader read the book, because one of the characters uses a wheelchair, and I do not use a wheelchair, so it was important to me to have a sensitivity reader for that. And I made
Mhm.
a few edits based on that. And then now I think the next step is copy edits, but that hasn't happened yet. So I think that will
Got
be
it.
happening soon.
Fun. Did
Mhm.
you find the sensitivity reader or did your publisher?
My publisher found the person. I'm not sure like how that process usually works. It might be different kind of
Okay.
between publishers. Yeah.
That's very cool. And what are you working on something new now? Or are you just kind of like in a transition where you're waiting for
Um,
edits?
yeah, I am working on something new. So I talked with my editor a little bit about some potential ideas for book two. And so I'm working on one of them now. And it's been a little rough, a little rocky. I think I have trouble kind of getting into a project every time I start a new one. And I'm just ferociously typing like, this sucks, everything about this sucks. And then it's done. And then I'm like, wait, how did that happen? um, and it still sucks, but it's done. So it's like, then you have something to go back to. So I'm working on that now, and I'm just really trying to move forward and like have fun with the process.
Yeah.
I haven't really nailed down the setting of the book yet, which is giving me a little bit of trouble. I have kind of like the concept, but not like where I want it to be, which I would love to nail down. I don't know, maybe I'm procrastinating or I just like haven't had a good idea yet.
What is your process for getting started? Like, does it start with an idea? Do you outline? Do you write a blurb? Like, how do you start it from blank page?
Yeah, that is a great question. I think it kind of depends book to book. So sometimes I think a lot of the time actually though, like I have kind of started with an idea for a setting in mind, which is what's like throwing me for a loop with this one.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I like having an idea for a setting and then like figuring out what could happen there. But I think it really depends. Like sometimes it's just kind of like an interesting like what if moment when I'm watching TV or like creepily watching people in coffee shops. um, but yeah, in terms of outlining, it's also a good question because I haven't been very successful at outlining in the past. I kind of have like a working outline. I'm putting this in quotes outline thing while I'm writing, so it's like a ongoing thing where I'm writing and then I'm concurrently outlining a little bit, but it's like really hard for me to outline and I don't really know why. But I've heard that that's the case for other writers, so I know I'm not like weird for not being able to outline.
No.
But I'm definitely trying to a little bit more with this one, like partially because as part of the publishing process, I need to give my editor an outline, ideally before the book is complete. I know it's okay if it changes after or like if things go in a different direction, but I'm trying to just kind of like get together an outline that would like get across the spirit of the story and kind of some of the important parts. So that's been a new challenge. Not altogether fun, but not terrible. So
Yeah.
yeah, so that's kind of what I'm working on, but I'm also kind of like drafting on the side. Other things that definitely are part of my process every time are I love to create a Pinterest board.
Ooh,
So
me
that's
too.
usually one of the first things that happens. Pinterest board and then maybe a Spotify playlist just for like musical inspiration as well.
Yeah.
And then I might just write down like lines that come to me or like scene ideas because I think scene ideas can be a really useful entry point into a book. So if you don't have a plot idea, you don't have an outline, but you have like 3 or 4 scene ideas, you can like connect them together, and it's sort of like an outline, but like it's a secret outline.
Yeah, that's a good trick. Kind of trick your brain into outlining.
Yeah.
We're just gonna write down what these scenes would be,
Mm-hmm.
brain, and then just connect them and then keep
Yeah,
going.
exactly.
That's all we're doing. When your debut comes out, will you link the playlist, do you think, or is it just for you for inspiration?
um, I think I'll make another playlist, like a more curated playlist.
Yeah.
So music is like a big-ish part of the book because the main character, without giving too much away, the main character is really into music. The love interest is a country music singer. So I would love to get to put together maybe a playlist of like songs that could be kind of like what he sings, but obviously they're not because he's not real. Or songs that the main character might like, but definitely a more curated playlist than my current playlist, which is pretty like wild and free ranging.
Yeah. Just kind of get you in the mood of the book.
Yeah.
Yeah. So when you are feeling like really stuck on the project, what do you do to kind of get out of that?
um, I think, okay, so I guess I can answer this question in terms of like if I was giving myself advice,
Yeah.
what I would do. I don't know that I actually always do it though. Um, but I think I try to just remember kind of what my favorite parts are of writing or of books I've previously written or like my favorite ideas for the project I'm working on. And I think that usually gets me out of my head a little bit because maybe I'd been thinking about like this subplot won't work because like X, Y, and Z. And then I'm like, okay, just focus on like writing this fun scene where they're like doing something crazy and just
Mhm.
being weird and just doing something fun. Um, and that usually helps me get back into it a little bit because I can kind of just focus on the characters or like an interaction that they're having. Um, so I think basically just getting out of the publishing mindset and into just like the writing for fun mindset. Because I think if you're like interested in publishing your work or anything, it's very easy to get kind of into the mindset of like thinking about what other people will think of it, whether that's an agent that will read your query or like the agent that you've already signed with or your editor or future readers or your beta readers. And there's so many other people that you can think about reading your book, but really what's important is just you writing your book. And so I think just remembering to like have fun with it, and just like write for yourself, because if you don't write for yourself, then I don't know, I'm a kind of a firm believer in like you write the story for you and other people will like it, because like if you've written it for yourself and you like it, like there will be people that like it out there. So that's the advice that I would give myself. Whether or not I follow it is a different story, because it's very easy for me to kind of get sucked into like, oh my god, this is like terrible and like the plot doesn't make sense. But just trying to like keep having fun with it, keep finding like the joyful moments of writing.
Yeah, it's definitely hard for me to switch from like editor brain to drafting brain because I
Mm-hmm.
feel like for drafting brain, you're just like hyping, you're the hype man, you
Mm-hmm.
know? Like,
Oh, that's such
this
a
is
good
great.
way.
This is going to be so fun.
That's
This is
such a
so
good way of
wonderful.
putting it. I love that.
Um, yeah, but then like for editing, you have to be like, well, is this realistic or is this working or does
Mm-hmm.
this need to be moved or maybe this needs to be taken out altogether? And so I think it's hard, especially when you're just so fresh off of another project where you're still going to get edits.
Mm-hmm.
To then be like, but we're going to go do this fun thing and not think about all those other things that we thought about so extensively for so long revising this other book. It's hard to switch.
It's really, really hard to switch. Yeah. And I think I've also kind of been a little bit in my head about book one versus book two. Because and you know, nobody has said this, like nobody has told me that I should be worried about these things. These are just things I've come up with on my own to be worried about. Like, is it too similar to book one? Like, is it too different from book one? Because if people like the first one, I want them to like the second one, but I also don't want it to be too similar. And so I think I'm just trying as much as possible to not think about that. And
Yeah.
just to kind of remember that there is a through line between the books, and it's that I wrote them. And so there will be something in them that's similar, but they're also obviously not going to be the exact same book. So,
Yeah. Totally. Totally. I recently just interviewed Holly Gramazio that wrote The Husbands,
oh, yeah.
and so her first, I don't know if you read The Husbands, but it is
Mm-hmm.
speculative fiction. Like a husband comes from the attic and then the husband goes back up in the attic and it comes down a different husband. And she actually in the beginning doesn't even have a husband. So it's very speculative. But she's working on her second book and it's not speculative. It
Mm-hmm.
is just
Oh, that's so
fiction.
interesting. Okay.
I find it so inspiring and
Yeah.
empowering because I'm like, that's amazing. And I'm sure it's going to be great. And I'm going to read it. And I know like other people are going to read it too. And she was like, well, it's going to have my same voice and my same humor and
Mm-hmm.
all of those things. It doesn't have to be speculative. Because I kind of get stuck on that too. Of like, I haven't published any books yet, but hopefully I will. But then, like, what, like, elements or themes or
Mm-hmm.
similarities, like, it's so tricky.
Yeah, that is really inspiring. I'm going to remember that. Wow. Yeah, I love knowing that.
Yeah. It's kind of freeing because, like, if she
Mm-hmm.
can do it, you can do whatever you want.
Yeah.
um, I don't know. I've been
Yeah.
thinking, I
There's a
think
lot.
about that a lot too because I write in different genres, and
Mm-hmm.
that's kind of a no-no. Is your next book going to be a romance?
Yes. So contractually, it has to be romance. But also, like, I want to write another romance, so I'm not complaining about that.
Yeah.
um, so yes, my next published book will be a rom-com. I sometimes think about like writing in other genres. I'm a big thriller reader. I know you also write in the thriller genre. And so I'd love to maybe like dip my toe into that at some point. But I feel like right now I'm pretty stuck in rom-com land.
Yeah,
Not
that's
stuck.
fun.
It's a great place to be, but
Yeah,
that's where I
it
am.
like stuck in there. The car is broken down. There's only one bed.
Yeah, I'll stay. It's fine.
That's awesome. I'm very excited to read this book and your next book
Thank
because
you.
this one sounds so fun. Bachelor inspired. Does it have a title now?
It does. I know the last
Yay!
time we chatted, it did not have a title. It does now have a title. The title is Most Eligible,
Oh,
and
fun.
it's still, I love it, first of all. It still doesn't totally feel like my title just because it's
Mm,
changed so many times. But I'm hoping
right.
that as I force myself to like say it out loud more, it'll start feeling like my title. And I
Yeah.
think that it's fun. I think it like gets across the sort of tone of the book, like a little cheeky, a little maybe classy. I don't know. I think it's a good title, and I think it fits well. So I'm happy with it.
Yeah. That's very cool. How's the title? Like, because I know the show is called The Love Shack. Has the title ever been The Love Shack?
Yeah. So in my book, the like fictional reality show is called Love Shack. It just I don't know why I didn't call it the Love Shack, but it's just Love Shack. But then
No,
they'll
that's
say
fine.
like
That makes sense.
then they'll say like Welcome to the Love Shack or something.
Right.
Um, the At one point I kind of played around with the idea of like Welcome to the Love Shack as the title. Yeah, I never really went. I think I was, and it never really came up with like my editor or my agent as an idea. I think earlier on I was kind of hesitant for that to be the title because I didn't
Hmm.
want people to see it, like hypothetically see it and be like, oh, it's about a shack on a beach and
Oh,
they're
right.
in love. Um,
Right.
where like this, it's a song title, which is like where I got the idea.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, I think that's why I didn't go in that direction, but it has had many titles. So
I hate titles.
I know, I feel like it's the type of thing where I don't know if you're the same way, but like I either have a title and I'm very stubborn and like I really want to stick to it the whole way, or I just have no idea what the title is like the whole time. It
I'm
never
both
happens.
ways. I'm very stubborn and yet I have no idea. So then once I have the idea, I'm like, well, that's the title because that's the one I
Yeah.
thought of. But I'm usually really open to changing titles
Mm-hmm.
eventually, but my brain has to come around to it. Like it takes a minute because it's
Yeah.
what you call it in your head when you're like writing it. I don't know.
Yeah, absolutely. It's hard. It's definitely hard to change like how you think about your book.
Yeah, it is. Does it have a cover yet?
No, no cover yet, but I'm very excited to see the cover whenever that happens.
Me too. It'll be so fun. Do you know when that will happen, or they don't tell you?
I'm not sure actually. I think it seems like usually cover reveals happen maybe about 6 months ahead of time, but
Hmm.
it also I think depends on publisher, and I'm assuming that I would also see it before it's like revealed. But I'll definitely let you know. So I'm very excited
Yeah.
for that. It's kind of funny because that's something that if I tell people I'm publishing a book, they're like, "Oh, what does the cover look like?"
Yes.
And it's so funny because that's one of the things I'm most excited for, but it's also something that I have absolutely nothing to do with. So it's kind of scary because I'm like putting this in other people's hands, and I'm sure it'll be great. Like I know that as soon as I see it, I'll just be like, it's amazing, but it's also a little bit nerve wracking.
Yeah, totally. Well, because as like the writer of the book, like when
Mm-hmm.
you write the book, you have so much control over the book. So it
Yeah,
must be a little unsettling to then be like, okay, this is my book. And you get
yeah,
to work with
yeah,
that, my little
absolutely.
baby that I wrote.
I know, and then I don't know if I don't have a way that I kind of imagine the title either, but
Hmm.
I'm sorry, not title, the cover. And so once I see it, it'll just be like this image that's like, it's going to be like the face of the book because people say don't judge a book by its cover, but like obviously people judge books by their covers. You have Wedding Dashers and You Between the Lines behind you, and I love both of those covers. They
They're
are
so fun, aren't
beautiful.
they? And they
They're
have kind of the same purple
I'm
thing
obsessed with
happening.
both of
Like
these
this
covers.
has this purple. Yeah, I love these both too. And I feel like they're good, like representations of the feel of the book. Like I think they
Mm-hmm.
really did a good job with those covers.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the feel of the book is definitely an important thing that you want to get have conveyed because there's like within romance even there's so much variation between like it could be a really kind of sad emotional romance or it could be like a kooky like wild ride filled with shenanigans and they're totally different but they're both romances.
Yeah. What is the feel of your book?
I think it's more along the lines of kind of a kooky wild ride. I mean, I think it's funny. I've been told it's funny, so I feel okay saying that. I don't think I'm just calling my own book funny, although there's times when I'm reading, I was like reading it out loud. Well, not out loud. I was reading it to myself and I would just start laughing,
That's
which
awesome.
which made me feel like proud, but also very self-centered because I'm like, I'm just laughing at my own jokes right now, but I guess, you should make yourself laugh with your own jokes.
Yeah. If you don't like
Um,
your book, then you have done it wrong.
I know. So I'm like, at least I like it. At least it's making me laugh, if nobody else. So I
Mhm.
think it's tone wise, it's like fun, kind of escapist. Just because it's in all these like mansions and very like picturesque locations. I've been told it's a little steamy. I have no comment on that. That's just what I've been told. And yeah, I think there's a lot of scenes in the book where I was writing them and I was thinking like, is this too much? Or like, is this kind of like too weird or crazy? Or like, am I going too far off the rails? I ended up keeping in pretty much all of those scenes and like they've made it to the end. And so I think the tone of the book was something that I was kind of drawn to it while I was writing, but I was also
Mhm.
questioning it a little bit because I was thinking that I really wanted there to be this deeper, like emotional part, but also to have these weird scenes where she's like crawling naked on the floor because she's spying on somebody and just like crazy stuff happening. And so, and I think I achieved the balance. We'll see what other people think, but I think it was, I was really just like I needed to kind of lean into the tone of the book and just kind of trust where it wanted to go, and not worry that it was like too much or something because that's just like that's what it is. And it turned out that other people liked it too. So
Yeah.
that was good.
It is so tricky, but like, I guess if you think about it, I don't know who wants to read a watered down book.
Yeah, exactly. And I think too, like, put it all in and then if someone tells you to take it out, like you can always take it out later.
Hmm.
um yeah, so I mean, I guess it's one of those things where just like, you do it all, you put it all in, you put everything you want in there. And like I guess if I'm doing that with my second book and my editor says this scene might be a little too much, I can always tone it down. But
Yeah.
we'll see. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I always put way too many characters in all of my books. So then it's a challenge of like, which ones need to go?
Oh, that's really
Who gets to
interesting.
leave?
Yeah, like I think an ensemble cast is so much fun though.
An ensemble cast is fun, but I always put like I love an ensemble cast, but then I'm always like, and then there's this person and this person and this person and this person. It's like too many. I think
Do
you have to cut
you
off the
do you end
ensemble
up
at some point.
kind of like combining any of the characters?
Yes, that is the goal.
Okay.
Yes, some of the characters get combined, and then some just get uh cut or
Hmm.
um like I'm revising. I have a lot of things, but I'm revising a romance that I wrote, and there's like somebody that shows up at a store that has connection to the main character, but like she doesn't show up again, and
Hmm.
like it's kind of unnecessary. So she just got completely cut. Poor girl.
Well, maybe she'll show up in another book.
Maybe,
Yeah.
maybe so.
Yeah,
Have
that
you
is a
ever had that
challenge.
happen where like
Um,
themes or like scenes or people from
mhm.
one book show up in another one?
Yeah, that's one of my favorite things, like just for myself, because like nobody else will ever really realize this, or like because they're people showing up from previous books that will probably never be published. But like for example, and this probably won't make any sense out of context, but there in the previous book that I wrote, which was set in Western Massachusetts, which is where I went to college and have spent a lot of time, probably my favorite place in the world. And I had an idea for like kind of a kooky next door neighbor who's kind of inappropriate, and she's got like a Brooklyn accent and curly red hair, and she's giving off kind of Natasha Lyonne vibes in Russian Doll.
Hmm.
And she wasn't, I didn't even write her into that book. She was just kind of in my head. And then she became one of the contestants on the show in my debut book. So I was like, I finally get to hang out with her. She's so much fun.
That's so fun.
And so nobody else but me, and now you, and anybody who listens to this will know that she was
But
like
now we all know.
from a different idea that I had, and I was just kind of obsessed with her. So I was excited to make her a side character.
Yeah. I just recently read Jessica Joyce's, she has a Substack and she wrote a whole article on stealing from herself.
I read the same one and I loved it.
Did you?
Yeah.
It made me feel really like better. I was like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, everybody does this. That's
Yeah,
great.
I also loved it. It's was something I'd been thinking about a lot actually, because I mentioned earlier, like I had this book I was querying where like people liked the first scene, um, and but the rest was kind of like no plot, etc. And I ended up like taking that first scene and putting it in another book, totally different book, but like same idea for a first scene, and then I've now taken it and put it into another book. And so like three of my different characters have like lived through this first scene. I don't know if it'll stick anywhere, but it's like I guess it's just an idea that never like let go of me. But I was like, well, if Jessica Joyce does it, you know,
Hmm.
this works. And I love her book so much. So that was really
Oh gosh,
inspiring.
me too. Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I
Yeah.
think it's tricky, like when I think about it right now, because none of my books are published right now. So it must be much trickier for her because her books are now published. So she can't steal from herself when it's something that we've
Mm-hmm.
seen. So it's a tricky practice.
Yeah, that is a good point. And something, yeah, like as I'm drafting, I've written a couple lines and just wrote a note to myself and said, make sure that you haven't written this before in the first book, because there's a chance I'm just like making the same joke twice. And
Or
I feel like I
yeah, I
need.
definitely had a metaphor that I kept using because I was like, I want it to
Mm-hmm.
stick in some book, but like now it's in a couple.
Yeah, well, it's so funny and kind of, I think, fun if you've read a few of an author's books maybe, and you notice maybe like certain little unique things about the way that they write or certain words that they
Mhm.
seem to really like. I just always think that that's really fun.
That is really fun. Do you have certain words that show up in your writing over and over?
Oh, I don't, off the top of my head, I don't know. I mean, there's certain things that I think are just little crutches for my writing. Like my characters gulp a lot, they gasp, they quirk an eyebrow. Like the amount of stuff that's going on with these people's eyebrows is just too much, because I never think about my own eyebrows. I don't know why they're so aware of their own eyebrows. It's a lot. And so as I was like going back and editing my last book, it's just so many eyebrows. I had to just really cut out a lot of that because it made no
Yeah.
sense. A lot of gulping, a lot of gasping, a lot of adverbs, but that's an easier one to kind of cut out.
Yeah.
So those are things that definitely show up and probably will continue to show up. So if you ever read my book and you see a lot of eyebrows, you know where I'm coming from.
My characters nod and shake their head a lot, and I nod and shake my head a lot. So it's coming from an honest place,
Mm-hmm.
but it's like they got to do something else. Or maybe
Yeah.
this one doesn't need to be an action beat.
Yeah, there's a great book. I think it's called The Emotion Thesaurus, unless I'm
Oh, I
wrong.
love
That is
that
a
book.
great book. I don't know if it's the one I'm thinking of though, but it has some good ideas for like what actions could go along with different emotions.
Mhm.
So I've tried to use that a little bit, but I know the eyebrows are just going to stick around, and I'll just like edit them out later. So
Yeah, sometimes you just have to put it in because your brain won't like move on
mm-hmm.
until you've done it, and then you can take them out.
Yeah.
Are there any other like craft books that you draw a lot of inspiration from or have learned a lot from?
Um, I've read the classics like Save the Cat and Romancing the Beat, which is more specific for romance. I think those are such interesting books because they're similar, but they're also like not the same in a certain way. So I think I end up doing kind of a combination of the two, maybe. And there's other books as well, like so the Emotion Thesaurus, and I know there's others that I'm kind of maybe forgetting. In terms of other craft things, though, I tend to I don't know. I listen to podcasts with writers. I've really been enjoying listening to this podcast.
Oh, thanks.
Just because I think it's so like rewarding and inspiring to hear other writers talk about their process, both in the way of thinking, oh, like I never thought about that. Maybe I'll try that. And also thinking, wow, like I'm not alone in doing that. That's really great to hear. And I've also done some writing courses online. I think the Shit No One Tells You About Writing has really amazing resources. Yeah, I think another like craft thing that really kind of changed the way I think about writing is just when I learned more about the idea of a goal, motivation, and conflict, which I know, or I'm pretty sure there's a book about that. I don't know if I've actually read it. I've just read a lot of different like websites or posts about it. And that was something that was like a craft thing that was really useful for me to think about, just in order to really solidify like what my character wanted and what was preventing them from getting that.
I've been, there is a book about it. I think it's called Goal Motivation Conflict, but I haven't read it, but I've been meaning to.
It's possible that I have read it or read part of it. I don't know. There's sometimes when I read like a craft book, I'll kind of like go to the section that I want or that I'm looking for. And then I kind of forget about the rest, but I should keep a list.
Yes. Well, thank you so much for being here and for sharing your writing process with us. Is there anything else that you would like to share?
Thank you so much for having me. This has been really fun to get to chat with you. I think I don't know if I really have anything else to share,
That's okay.
but yeah, I'm excited to continue listening to this podcast, and I'll once I have like more news about my book, I'll definitely let you know. But it's probably won't be for a little while.
Okay, that sounds awesome. Well, thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much.
I had such a great time talking with Isabelle. I really loved what she had to say about writing for yourself, like remembering to write a story that you like. And I think that's so important and sometimes something we lose vision of, especially if, like me, you have been writing for a while and yet are still kind of looking for your place in the publishing industry. It's really important to keep that in mind that you have to love the book first, right? Because if you don't love it, then who will? So, are you writing something that you love right now? Or are you writing maybe something that you don't? Hopefully, you're writing something that you love. If you would like to drop in the comments what you're working on, we'd love to hear it. Thank you so much for being here. See you next time.